kind of feel bad for these people, but at the same time I don't because they're stupid.
See a circle around yourself, just start pissing everywhere.
Oh, I hate the Dutch.
Welcome to our country, and so
She doesn't really look Canadian. She looks almost American. Just insulted all of Canada.
Oh, every time I say something f***ed up, then you gotta... If I'd known that before, I would have just, interspaced every other sentence with something horrible.
Well, I haven't felt my feet since I sat down in a chair.
Can you see your feet, though?
No. I'd rather do anything else on the planet than go tip a cow over.
How about Canada? Is there any stream access issues up in Canada?
nobody cares.
Very much.
Kids, if you don't understand that joke, ask your parents.
Evan, Derek,
Yeah.
Oh, crap, here it comes.
your flies are open.
Thanks.
Grab hold of your flies. This is a podcast for nymphers, strippers, swingers, and dry fly guys. It's the show that brings you stories, instruction, and conservation from three guys who live it every day. This is The Open Fly.
All right, coming to you from what was until yesterday Duval Island. It is no longer Duval Island. Anybody get the reference?
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of water around.
It's funny every time.
It is. Yeah, well, 100-year floods only come every couple of years.
Yeah, the first year that we moved out here, we were amazed at the good fortune of experiencing what they called a 100-year flood. Mm-hmm. And we had two of them that first winter. It was pretty special.
It is special. Duval's special.
I'm special.
Was there any damage to our local fish hatchery?
I don't believe there was any sewage backup.
I don't think we've given the story of the Duval fish hatchery yet.
No. You can find it on my blog, which is the... can I plug my...
I'd rather you didn't.
Plug your blog.
Oh, go ahead and plug it.
Okay. TheUnaccomplishedAngler.com. A few months ago, I did an expose on the local Duval Municipal water treatment facility, which is adorned with really beautiful
fish art,
metal fish art, which we call fart. And when you go down to the Public Works Department, you're overlooking this vast facility that has the fish art along the railing, and to the unknowing, you might think that you're at a municipal brown trout hatchery.
Exactly.
Is that fart with a PH or just a F?
No, just an F.
Not
because
fart.
Fish. It's fish, not
It's fish.
PH.
Not you
PH.
can spell it with a PH, but then you're just talking about a really terrible band.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does Derek like fish?
Sometimes.
All right. I couldn't tell if I was going to offend him with that or not.
Yeah. So
because we're very careful to not offend people on this show.
I'm offended
By
the show.
Yeah.
Well, in studio today we have with us Kent Lufkin and Kim McDonald from Fish Not Gold, who we will be interviewing after the first break, but they'll be hanging out and suffering through our half hour of drivel to open up the show. So, welcome.
Thank you. We're glad to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any regrets so far?
I'm still thinking about that.
Well, we covered safety when we got here, so they know where to go if there's a fire, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm thinking we're getting close to that point now.
All right, well.
What do you think of the fart in the studio? There's plenty.
Just all over.
There's plenty. Lots of fart in the Open Fly studios.
Oh, I see some shart. Steelhead art. Very nice.
I got nothing.
Yeah.
Chart, because there's a bull char up there.
Well, then there's the picture of the guy who looks like a ZZ Top.
No, that's Ted Nugent.
No, that's Ian. He was actually in your seat last week. He was actually on our last episode as a guest co-host.
Yeah, and he never tires of that reference to Ted Nugent.
Mm-hmm.
That explains that burning sensation.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
We have to make sure we hashtag Ted Nugent for this podcast, because that'll bring him in.
Hashtag.
Hashtag.
Yeah. All right. Well, anybody got anything else? You good? We can move on to something useful.
Plenty.
Actually, probably a good time to bring up. We've provided Kirk with an insult comeback sheet. A lot of people have been complaining that we make fun of Kirk a little too much. So, as an act of contrition, I found an insult generator so that he can come back quickly. Kirk, why don't you quickly try to insult me here?
Well, I'm just holding it up to the mic for everybody to see.
Yeah, thank you.
Say something to me unsavory.
Kirk, you're short and old.
Well, that's true. I have nothing. Yeah, Evan, well, you're a lazy ass pirate. I was cross-referencing. There's 3 columns, and you can combine them into nearly unlimited. You're a smelly crotch jockey.
It's like verbal Jenga.
It is. Well, you can just keep that in your station there, and
I will. I'm going to laminate it and carry it in my wallet.
Awesome.
Very nice.
All right. Speaking of Kirk, we're going to let him get to our listener feedback. Your listener feedback segment brought to you by All of the Woolly Bugger.
Awesome.
Yeah. How about that?
Our first comment comes from Ben, and he says, "Hey guys, was introduced to your show by a friend of mine, Taylor. You couldn't figure out his gender. We fish mostly in New England, and I was wondering if you have any tips for winter trout fishing. Are fish always down deep, large or small nymphs, etc.?" Wow.
This is going to get awfully instructional, I fear.
That's all right. We'll allow it during the listener feedback segment.
We could just say no and move on.
We could. Awkward silence. Hey, Derek, you're the troutiest here.
I've never fished in Maine, so I couldn't tell you.
Oh,
I would suggest going someplace warm like Belize instead.
yeah.
Don't jump. He didn't say Maine. He said New England.
Oh.
That would be like
You
Massachusetts.
jump into conclusions.
Yeah, I mean, from my experience, yeah, I mean, I don't think you're ever going to be in the wrong by going deeper. I mean, that's kind of where they hang out unless they're given a reason to come up. Usually when the water's colder, most fish, whether they be steelhead or trout or whatever, are less likely to move farther.
Yep.
They tend to slow down a little bit, so you want to do what you can to get a little bit closer to them.
Small nymphs down deep.
Yeah.
Or just leave them alone in the wintertime.
Stay home.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. Kent, Kim, what do you guys
mean,
do in the middle of winter for trouts?
I stay home.
Yeah.
Everybody's nodding.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, well,
that was very, very helpful
Yeah.
segment.
I'm sure Ben's really glad he asked that series of
Yeah,
questions.
and in general with the small nymphs thing, I was told by somebody a long time ago that big flies equals big fish, small flies equals all fish. So
We did catch a big whitefish on
Oh, yeah?
a large stonefly nymph a couple weeks ago.
I did too when I was steelhead fishing this week. I was actually swinging a Pat Stone and swung up a big old whitey.
There you go.
Yeah.
Whitey on the turd.
Yeah.
The second part. Sorry, what? No. Huh?
Nothing.
No.
Was
Carry
asking
on.
if that left a stain, but probably not.
Sit on your hands, Derek. The next question from Ben, or comment, says, "I'm able to listen to the show at work, which is great. I haven't learned much, which I think is the point.
You're welcome.
But I sure have been greatly entertained. Thanks for putting out a great show. You have another fan here. Thanks," with an exclamation point. Well, thank you, Ben.
Yeah, thank you, Ben, for putting out feedback.
Feedback. Kim and Kent are shaking their heads in disbelief that they actually got sucked into this.
What are we doing here?
It's like we're like a suction dredge. We're just.
I'm checking to make sure my fly's zipped up.
That's a good call.
I'm not going to touch that one. Kent, is your fly open?
You should know.
Anonymous writes, moving along, "Why does the intro announcer say this podcast provides instruction, but you guys joke about not providing over a podcast?"
Providing what over a podcast?
I don't know.
I don't know. Was he not listening to the last thing where we talked about small nymphs and cold water? That was pretty instructional.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're not banning instructional content. We're just not seeking it out. So if you message in with a question about fishing or something, we're glad to answer it. It's a good way to get to know your hosts and our fishing experience. But we're not going to make a lesson plan for each show because that's just not us.
Let's just do a quick test. If you're listening to us for instructional content, please raise your hand. I didn't see anybody. So
Yeah.
I also want to say to Mr. or Ms. Anonymous, you are not the boss of us.
No,
this
no.
is a dictatorship.
that's another good point.
And we are in charge. How dare you question our motives and antics?
Heavy-handed tactics.
Yeah.
All right. I feel a little better right now.
Yeah. Carry on.
Okay, Peter writes, "So, hey. You're-
Hey.
Hey.
How's it going?
Your shows continue to entertain. Keep up the good. Do I have to?
You can. We have ducks.
We got the, okay.
We have ducks.
Keep up the good fucking work. I have 2 questions for ye. 1, I went back and listened to episode 5 again, in which you talk about pinning beads being illegal in Wyoming or some shit. I don't pin beads, and I'm not a fucking expert, but I had a thought, a rare thing, and I didn't want to waste it. Why not just tie an egg fly with a stinger hook tied the same length below it as you would have the hook pinned on a bead? Is that a stupid fucking idea?
An articulated egg fly.
I think it's a pretty smart idea.
Yeah. It's like an egg-sucking leech with the leech removed.
Right.
A couple strands of flashaboo behind that. Maybe
That's
little schlopping.
Yeah. Please hold the following image up so your listener can see. Okay.
Listener, not plural.
Yep.
A singular.
Hashtag problem solved. Hashtag suck at Wyoming.
Hashtag
YOLO. Hashtag Bieber fever. Referring to the Canadian Justin Bieber. And hashtag you're welcome. And there's the photo for our listening audience to enjoy.
Yeah.
He has very soft looking palms. Number 2, Peter writes, are you going to fucking do a show on shad fishing in the Columbia? I want to try this. I want to try that shit out. It looks goddamn redonk.
I too enjoy that fishery, but again, I'm not going to make a lesson plan on it. If you have any questions about it, why don't you write in, or you can just email me directly, and I'll answer the question. I do that fishery every year.
Should we create an Ask the Expert segment of the show, or we just have somebody tell us what they're an expert at and what they want us to hear? And
yeah, we have to bring in experts.
Yeah.
Right.
Or I can just pretend to be an expert. But I do that fishery every year. It's a pretty good time.
I can't help but just, I have this vision of Peter in my head, and he's got a flat-billed cap and a puffy coat and just a bad attitude.
So I'm thinking of isn't there a really well-dressed salmon pattern called a Hilton?
The Hilton?
The Silver Hilton?
Silver
like
Hilton, yeah.
That's like a silver Hilton Garden Inn or something. An articulated egg fly.
Yeah. That's the Holiday Inn Express.
Holiday Inn Express. Someone's got a tying contest right there, Holiday Inn Express.
Oh, we are going to have a tying contest. Don't let me forget to introduce our flying contest we discussed a couple days ago.
Okay.
We'll leave the hook on for you.
Articulated egg fly tying contest.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Cameron from the Fiberglass Manifesto. Cameron Mortensen.
Somebody famous.
Yeah, what's he doing sharing his time with us?
I don't know. I had dinner with him a couple weeks ago, so maybe that's why.
He sent us some swag.
He did. He sent us some stickers and some other things. I actually had them on display here in the studio. And some koozies.
We'll have to get him on the podcast sometime.
Well, we'll have him in studio.
How to actually build a money-making venture.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Anyway, Cameron writes, fellows, great episodes, plural, so far, and dig the podcast a lot. After spending some time with Evan at a couple of the fly fishing shows this winter, I'm convinced that he's got some pent-up rage for parts of the fly fishing industry and beyond. It might be fun listening to give him... I'm confused by Cameron's lack of command over the written language. It might be fun listening to give him 2 minutes at the start of each episode and let the rant rampage begin. Just a thought. Keep up the solid work.
Well, first off, Cameron, don't name drop me at the beginning of your email, like just trying to ham us up. And second, what the hell gave you the idea that I had anything to complain about or any kind of opinions? I mean, what the hell show were you listening to?
Calmer than you are, dude.
Yeah. So, no, that's not going to happen.
I think Cameron, though, has got a very keen and investigative mind, however, though.
Indeed.
Oh, he does, yes. Yeah.
So who knows?
Read between the lines there.
Read between the lines there.
Anyway, it would be a fun segment. It would be one that we would probably move forward with if I was not considered a fly fishing industry professional that had to maintain some level of professionalism. So going on and complaining about various parts of the industry would probably not be wise for my full-time employment outside of the Open Fly podcast.
Yeah, well, I think it's fairly safe to say that Evan doesn't have pent-up rage.
No.
toward the fly fishing industry specifically. It's just generally his outlook on life.
Right.
Life's dealt you a tough hand.
Yeah. I've got it rough, man.
Woe is you.
Had a rough life,
Yeah,
as you can tell.
we're here for you.
I know.
Hug?
No.
I think he just does it overtly. I mean, he takes a pin rod to a trout river and does 100-yard drifts under a center pin. I mean, that's the equivalent of a big middle finger on the river.
On the boat of a fly fishing guide.
Yeah, it's like,
not just any fly fishing guide, but Orvis endorsed Fly Fishing Guide 2011 of the year.
I tell you what I'm going to do today. I'm going to bring my center pin rig. So put the boat where I needed it to. Thanks.
Yeah, and not just that, but I didn't even run flies on it. I ran a spoon under the bobber.
And here I am, still friends with you. So it all kind of works out.
Did it. I just did it to say that I did.
Judge not, lest you be judged.
Right. Awkward silence again.
Yeah, there's really no such thing as an awkward silence. Oftentimes it's a welcome reprieve.
Yeah.
Kind of a little timeout. Mm-hmm. We regroup.
Right. I guess I'll while it's fresh in my mind, I'll talk about the fly tying contest that we hinted at earlier. We discussed it maybe all of 30 seconds the other day, so it's a very official established thing that we're doing now. You guys remember what we talked about?
No, I can't remember that far back.
I should go listen to the show, probably.
It wasn't a show. It was in our meeting, our business meeting. We're going to do a fly tying contest to win one of our new T-shirts that you can buy on our website. But if you want to win one of these, we're going to have you do a contest to tie up what looks like our logo. So if you've seen our orange and blue logo, we want to see how close you can get to tying up one of those. There's a few criteria that we're going to be judging it on that we're keeping secret. But if you can figure out what that is, you have a good chance of winning. So
does it have to be? Oh, I wasn't supposed to. That's going to be edited out.
Yeah. that's the criteria.
That's sneaky.
Yeah. So tie up our logo fly. Maybe give it a name. That might go into some points as well. So whatever materials you can pull together to make it look as close as you can, send us the pictures. We'll share them on our Instagram and on our Facebook and Google Plus and what other social networks?
Twitter.
I still don't get Twitter.
You don't have to because I do.
Yeah. Well, you don't get the Instagrams.
That's true.
Right. I don't know. I keep looking at our Twitter and I read every post and I just don't get anything that's being said anywhere.
Well, that's kind of the point, I think, of tweets.
Is it? Is that they're just supposed to be a bunch of garbled gibberish?
To make you a little bit curious what the hell the person's talking about. It's like, what's that hashtag mean? I'll go follow that.
Well, if you don't get what we're tweeting, then that's actually my fault.
No, I don't get what anybody tweets.
Oh, okay. Well, I feel better now.
Mm-hmm. I don't really get Google Plus either, but I still do that.
It's all right.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've confused our guests today here in the studio. They're wondering what the
how do we get
fly tying contest. We'll be reminding you from over the next couple weeks. You have until the end of March to do this. So probably our first show in April we'll announce the winner, and you will win the Open Fly Podcast T-shirt.
Should probably note that on our April 1st show, we're also giving away a cabin in Montana.
Oh, are we? Nice.
Right on the banks of the Madison River.
Nice. Like a stay there, or is it like we're just signing over the deed?
No, we're signing over the deed to the land.
Oh.
Yeah. Comes with a boat and truck.
That's
servant staff.
All right. Tune in on April 1st for more on that.
Yep.
All right. Sponsor segment. Our next giveaway is going to be next week. Allen Fly Fishing has donated a new Heritage Series rod. You can check it out on their website at allenflyfishing.com. You'll get your choice of any of the sizes offered. It's the new classic style action trout rod series. So if you're one of our monthly donators or you're donating to a conservation cause of any sort, if you're donating to a conservation cause, you can send us your receipt or anything like that, just proof that you donated. We'll enter you into the drawing. More information on our website. You click the donate button, and it's all on there. So, good winter rod.
Did you say good winter rod?
It's what?
Did you say good winter rod? Because somebody was asking earlier about what kind of flies do you use for fishing winter? What kind of rod do you use for fishing in the winter?
This one and nothing else.
okay.
Why didn't they name it the winter rod instead of the
Because that
heritage?
sounds stupid.
I don't.
Oh, I mean,
Wow, it defines the season in which to use the rod. I think it's intuitive.
But it's not limited to winter.
Well, then you sell them 3 more rods: the spring, the summer, and the fall rods.
Same blank, different color, different print.
Yeah,
Marketing.
yeah, that's what I'm all about.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk to the boss about that.
What do you think, Kent?
You and Vivaldi. We could call them the Four Seasons series.
Ooh,
But then-
swanky.
Yeah. So cool.
you could charge a lot for that, probably. That name
4
is
times as much.
That name is synonymous with quality.
Indeed.
4 Seasons.
All right, so there you go. You can enter to win this new rod. So you can check out our website for that. Kirk, let's go ahead and choose a winner for our our weekly feedback. What we're giving away this week is a line winder from our friends at Fall River Rods, Fall River Fly Rods. Jason Zika is a custom bamboo rod builder. You can check him out online. He's donated this cool line winder. So if you want to pull the line off your reel without coiling it up and knotting it and everything, this is an awesome way to do it.
All right, and the name from the hat is Smelly Bitch Waffle.
Yay!
Wait, sorry, wrong sheet of paper. That was the ultimate insult creator.
Good job, Mr. Waffle.
My bad.
I knew I got that for something.
Okay, I'm reaching into. And the winner is Peter.
Yeah, the articulated egg fly.
Yeah.
Good. That won you a thing.
That's serendipitous.
And Peter is not from the ultimate insult creator. That's actually his name from the sheet. So,
Yeah.
all right.
Good.
Thanks, Peter.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Send us more emails, all of you.
Clean up your language next time.
Our listeners are going to get real tired of hearing that duck.
Yeah.
And we are a PG-13 show, so I think we're only allowed one non-sexual F-bomb and tasteful nudity on each episode.
No tasteful nudity here.
Not particularly tasteful.
I'm wearing flip-flops.
Yeah, I'm showing my white legs.
It's flip-flop weather. It's
It
getting
is.
close.
It will be till tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've mentioned the new shirts on the website. Again, go check those out and buy them. Keep the lights on here, please. Please.
Yeah.
Yeah? I'm sounding a little desperate? No. And you can check us out on Facebook, Google+, Instagram, Twitter, on our website.
We should
smoke
get a
signals.
malnourished open fly podcast puppy.
We should.
People see that and they'll just
wallets are open.
yeah.
Anyway, I was getting to sending us into our first break here. When we come back, we'll be talking to Kent and Kim here about fish, not gold. All right, this is the Open Fly Podcast. We'll be right back.
Now back to the Open Fly.
Okay, we are back with our conservation segment. In the studio today, we have two representatives from Fish Not Gold. We have Kim McDonald and Kent Lufkin. So welcome to you two. We only have one mic, so they're going to be alternating.
Thanks.
That's Kim,
Hey, wait, I thought I was first.
and that's Ken. So Kim and Kent, thanks for coming in. We definitely appreciate it. This is definitely a local issue for us right now, but we're definitely going to tie it into how it's going to affect people in other states and how it can set a precedent. So if you're not in Washington, like we said before in previous stuff, there's definitely something in here for you. So I think they have a pretty cool story to tell, and I think it's a pretty important issue for us all to pay attention to. So we're going to have one of you, I don't know if you've decided yet, kind of take it away and kind of give us the summary of what Fish Not Gold is all about.
Well, thanks for having us. And let's just kind of start off by how we came into the issue. I was up in the Blewett Pass area a number of years ago and saw a bunch of guys out kind of fiddling around the stream, and I went over and looked, and they had this basically a pontoon boat with a Honda engine on it and a 5-inch nozzle sucking up the stream. It's like having a shop vac floating in the middle of the stream. And I asked them what they were doing. Well, we're mining for gold. And I thought, wow, that's really amazing that they can do this. I mean, I'm a trained ecologist, and I was kind of stunned that they were able to do that in the middle of the stream. About 2 years later, I was driving along the Wenatchee, and I saw a guy doing it in the Wenatchee. And this is long after WDFW had closed the Wenatchee to any kind of fishing. And again, I was sort of stunned by it. So I started just doing some research and found out that California imposed a moratorium on suction dredge mining, and kind of followed that a little bit and started thinking that maybe I wanted to write an article about this, because to me it was a conservation issue of why was this happening and why were we allowing this to happen. And then last year, Kent and I got involved in a discussion about what was going on in the North Fork of the Clearwater in Idaho.
So it's not just a local issue.
Oh, no. Oh, no. In fact, we can even talk that they're trying to impose a moratorium in Maine. So it's completely across the country, back to the New England issue.
Excellent.
So California now has a moratorium on it, and all the miners from California started going into southern Oregon. And so you have all these expensive vacation homes along the Rogue River, and people would get up in the morning and hear the noise of these Honda engines, just one after another, sucking up the Rogue. And finally, people who have ritzy homes got a little upset about this, and they contacted their state legislator, who started working with some conservation groups like Trout Unlimited, the American Society of Fisheries, and then some other conservation groups in Oregon, and they have now, as of last July, severely restricted the number of permits in Oregon, and if regulations aren't written in time, they'll have a moratorium in another year. And so we started looking at what's going on in Washington State, and Washington State, it's a free-for-all. If you want to mine like this, you can. So that's kind of where we're at. And we started talking to each other and said, hey, we need to get involved in this issue and figure out a way to at least bring some enforcement, some oversight, and particularly because we're in the land of endangered species out here. I mean, every single stream and river in Washington State and in Oregon and in British Columbia are impacted by our endangered species issues. And any little bit that you can help those fish, in my opinion, is our obligation and our duty. So
give us Ken, did you want to add to that before I ask a question? So you mentioned the pontoon boat, and the motor sucking it up. Give us a little bit of an idea of when you watch that happen, like how badly does it scar up the river? How much sediment ends up in the river? Like what exactly, what's the damage that's being done? Because obviously, I mean, anybody can think about what's going on and tell it's going to be doing some damage, but what's the extent of it?
Well, so what these guys do is, they look for streams that they think have potential for gold. And in, they're deep canyon areas. They are a lot of our prime headwaters for steelhead, for salmon, is where they're doing this in Washington State. So the Swauk, the Pashaston, Nason Creek, up near Monte Cristo, all those rivers. We're looking at the South Fork of the Nooksack. And so they have these 5 or 4 inch nozzle and literally these guys put on wetsuits. They'll go underwater, they'll take pry bars, they'll use winches, they'll move boulders, and they'll try to get those nozzles underneath. They can suck up about 2,100 cubic feet of gravel in a day, and they run it through the hose, and then it runs through a sluice, and obviously because gold is a heavier metal, it settles on the sluice, and then what comes out of there is a 200 to 300 foot plume of dirt and sediment. So it just goes downstream. You get these on these small streams, and they'll be lined up one every 200 feet, which is the regulation, but they don't usually follow those regulations. So you have one right after another, and so you just got these muddy streams that are heading downriver.
So as a boat angler, I can't get out and push a log out of the river that's blocking my passage with the boat, but these guys can crowbar a boulder out of the middle of a run and then vacuum up everything around it?
Exactly. And,
Sweet.
In Washington State, we're spending every year, last year in the capital budget, we spent over $219 million on salmon restoration. That's taxpayer dollars that we're spending to restore our streams, which we ought to be doing. And these guys can go in and trash, the Boy Scout project that helped put in some, root balls and put on some logs and maybe put some boulders in. These guys can go in and just winch it and move it and look for their gold, and no one is making them even restore it back to the condition. So, it's like taxpayer dollars are floating downstream.
Any idea the quantity of gold that's actually, harvested from these outfits?
Our sense is not a lot. Now, the miners argue that they are a subsistence crowd and that any attempt to regulate them is an interference with their ability to make a living. Honest to God, if you visit their sites, you'll see people holding their palm up with maybe a quarter-sized or a nickel-sized wad of little tiny gold flakes. Now, even at $1,600 an ounce, you know what? That's not going to make a lot of payments on your suction dredge. So our sense is that it's really not a subsistence issue, that it's really a right to issue. Mm-hmm. And that's really the issue for us, is that honestly, the more we looked into this, the more we found this disconnect between the regulations in Washington affecting fishermen and those affecting miners. So waters that are closed to fishing are open to mining, or waters that have work windows that are open to mining. Those work windows, in some cases, are longer than the open season for fishing. So it really begs a larger question, and that is, why do miners march to a different drum? Why are they not regulated? Now, they'll claim they are. It's onerous regulations, and that really quickly devolves into a conversation about big government leaning on their freedom and liberty and their ability to make a living and yada, yada, yada. The reality is they're damaging our streams. The reality is they're doing it without regulation and without enforcement.
Well, they're just along the mindset, it sounds like, of, well, as long as I get mine, who cares about everybody else?
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
How do we shift this discussion away from having to do all of this work whenever these issues pop up? So I'll take a step back and say, whenever we have a discussion about new dams, there's always this huge process that involves the developer and then all the conservation organizations. They come in and say, well, we'd like to do this to this area. Then there's a public comment period, and then people have to do all of this work. Why can't we shift this discussion away from, if there's extractive uses of rivers, for whether it be power generation or for subsistence mining, how do we get this to the point where we identify all of these places that cannot be considered as part of that scope? Because we spend a lot of time fighting people that want to put dams where there's protected fish and mine where there's protected fish. Aren't there rivers and streams where there are no protected fish that they could go and do this at and the issue is over? Or how do we get to that point where we start identifying those places first?
Yeah, I think, to me, I was around when the steelhead and the salmon species were listed in the late 1990s in Washington State. And there was this big, huge, kind of belief system that we need to really be doing something big picture. Mm-hmm. And it seems that, time has sort of eroded everybody's interest to doing something really big. But I think you hit the nail on the head, Derek. I think we really ought to be rethinking again. Listen, we have got all these streams and rivers in Washington State that have been listed as critical habitat for the salmon, the steelhead, the bull trout. And it pretty much is most of the rivers and streams in Washington State. Mm-hmm. And we should be saying, hey, those are off limits. We don't want to have to keep refighting those battles every time. We've got to figure out, in a sense, a master plan of what we're doing. And I have yet to see that kind of master plan come out. Mm-hmm. And it just seems to me to be a waste of all of our time is to be having to fight these little battles for, protecting every single stream every time.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that there's an age limit on these suction dredging miners? Nobody over the age of 21 can engage in this activity? Is that how I understand it? Or am I confused?
There's a height limit, too.
Invoke of the sheet.
Evan's shaking his head. It's like miners with an E, not an O. Sorry, I
see what you did there.
We think of it as a ride in Disneyland,
That's that cutting edge humor failing again.
It's what cutting edge humor you are known for, Kirk. Just keep keep it coming.
Derek, you mentioned a good word about extractive. And in David Montgomery's book, The King of Fish, The 1,000-Year Run of Salmon, he documents how societies starting in the British Isles, then moving to the Northeast, and then finally to the Pacific Northwest, systematically abused runs of salmon. And it's like we are slow learners. We have ignored Santa Anna's, those who refuse to learn the lessons of history are destined to repeat them again. And we keep repeating these lessons because we continue to make the same mistakes. So in my view, there's a cultural issue here, and that is, it's kind of like John C. Fremont. Go ahead, burn down a tree because you're drunk. There's thousands more of them. It doesn't matter. What's a few fish? And that's really the issue. And in a bigger picture, we live in Washington, which is the smallest land area of any state west of the Mississippi, yet it has the second highest population, second only to California. You do the math, you come up with a number of population per square foot or square meter or square mile, and you find out that our density is really not far behind California. So the problem is not one miner sucking up some river bottom on one stream. It's a lot of miners doing that all at once. But unlike the Pebble mine that has really focused our attention on that particular operation that's constrained by geography, what's happening in Washington is that through that benign neglect that the DFW is not using to regulate miners, we have this collective and cumulative damage that is really being done to all of our streams. And that's really what Fish Not Gold's all about.
We talked a little bit last week with Bob Triggs about the concept of environmentalism, and as a person who gets makes a living taking people out and showing them a resource and how to fish for it and how to protect it. And I think fishermen really do encompass that when they go out to the water for the most part. But we do end up in these scenarios that now a fly fisherman is now very, very close to the environmental kind of movement, because places we like to fish, places we like to go have these issues. So as fly fishermen, we're very, very close to the environmental aspect of moving this forward. So how do we harness that part of it? Because everybody's behind Pebble Mine. How do we harvest these little kind of views at issues that we need to be all paying attention to and contributing to helping on?
I think there's a disconnect that happens at a state level, and that is the Department of Fish and Wildlife. They're charged with protecting fish and fisheries, and yet they're also charged by the legislature with actually not regulating miners. So DFW finds itself between a rock and a hard place. Their biologists know full well the extent and the degree of damage that is caused by suction dredge mining. Yet they were specifically directed by a 1997 act of the legislature to make it as easy as possible on suction dredge miners by not imposing onerous regulations, like, say, applications in which we know your name and address and where you're going to be mining. They're not even charged a fee. So DFW literally is conflicted, and honestly, in my view, it starts there. It starts with an administrative and a legislative remedy that says, hey, wait, let's hold these guys to the same bar. We don't have a low bar for miners and a high bar. I'm raising my hand here as if you can see that. A high bar for fishermen.
Get a little closer to the mic. Your hand.
Yeah, that's when I purchase my fishing license, my annual fishing license every year. It comes with my requisite, parking access pass for WDFW, and now I have to purchase a separate pass that lets me park in a state park, which I've already paid for in terms of taxes before as well. Each one of those, my fishing license and both of my parking permits have barcodes on them. Right. So you want to talk about people who have onerous regulations on them. Fly fishermen, with the scan of a barcode, somebody could know where you are all of the time just by scanning what comes on your license or your parking passes. Why can't miners have the same sort of regulation? Right.
Much less, to pay a fee so that we can have some income at WDFW to be able to have some enforcement mechanisms. Completely agree with all of that. One of the problems is this: the mining community, as far as we can tell, is a fairly small group of people, that tend to migrate both between California, Oregon, and Washington. And as when we launched our website, when we launched our Facebook page, when we launched Twitter, we got just carpet bombed by these guys. And I mean, they are angry, they are vicious. We were called amazing names that my mother would like.
Pull out the sheet there, Kirk.
Yeah, no, those.
We're going to send you home. We're going to send you guys with one of those to keep in your
thank
offices.
you. Yeah, because now I'll know what they're trying to tell me. I wasn't quite sure what it was.
See, now we're being instructional.
Communist turd goblin.
I was that. I was a communist turd goblin, and much less an East Coast one, even though I live,
in Tweed.
West Coast. Yeah,
in
right.
Tweed? Tweed wearing.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Goblin,
a communist, socialist, this, that, and the other thing. Anyway, and particularly when you're a woman, you get called all sorts of other things that might not be on that sheet.
I'm sure they are.
Yeah, well, it could be. But,
thorough.
Anyway, they just overwhelm you. And when, so one of the ways that we need to get the fly fishing community involved is to overwhelm back. I mean, there are a lot more of us than there are of them. And we need to let Olympia, we need to let our governments know that we are concerned about conservation, that we take our responsibility and our obligation and our duty to the fish and the water resources that we love to be out on. We take that seriously, and we want to see some action. So, I mean, the big picture for us is that when the time comes, we're going to need people to be, kind of rallying and have our backs as well as the backs of the state legislators or the WDFW commissioners who, we need to let them know we care about this far more than the, what were those names that I was being called? Yeah, than those guys who were calling me those names.
And you mentioned beforehand that these guys are, the vicious thing. What are some of the stories that kind of back that up? You had mentioned a few of them. Any you want to share with everybody? Like one down in Oregon or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a political stripe to most of the comments that we get, and it involves a kind of a distrust, a distaste for, quote, I'm making finger quotes, big government. And some of the miners call them gun grabbers. So these are people that want to strip away their, quote, rights. And they tend to look at those rights as codified in a law called the 1872 Mining Act. And basically that was a doc signed by Ulysses Grant as an attempt to lure people to settle in the West. And it said basically, come out here and by gosh, you can stake a claim and you can get rich. And that lured a lot of people to the West. So it was much a ploy as it was anything else. But the larger issue right now is people tend to look at that as if it were writ large. And this is word that came down from on high. And any other attempt to rein in or to regulate their activities then is an agenda. These are people who are trying to trample our rights. And so what's happened is...
As if the rest of us don't have rights as well.
Well, touche, like the fishing community. But we take those rights as, not rights, but as a privilege. So we pay for that privilege. We pay licensing fees. We pay, we observe the regulations. Miners, not so much. A miner in Southern Oregon recently shot a person who he felt was trespassing, and I'm making air quotes, on his land.
So tell us, you mentioned before a little bit about these stake claims, or where miners kind of claim they have the rights to the stretch of river or this or whatever. What exactly is that? What exactly are they saying when they have a stake?
So what you do to stake a claim is you can go out and basically tack a piece of, plywood on a tree. So in federal forest land, you could tack a piece of plywood on a tree and it'll say, number 10 banjo claim. And which that brings up deliverance, doesn't it? Uh-oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
No, that was well played.
Yeah. Anyway, so you can, and then you have under the federal law, you have certain things you have to do in order to perfect that claim, which are pretty simple. You kind of have to maybe pick up a piece of litter, and you have to at least look for minerals on that claim, and then you file a document with the local county recorder's office. And then you have to kind of keep mining that claim. So if you are out driving in the woods, if you're up at Verlot and you're looking you actually start looking in the woods and you'll see trucks or cars pulled over and you can see these plywood things nailed to the tree. That's a miner out there working his claim. And, speaking of another story, 2 summers ago I was up on Blewett and I was thinking I was going to do some small stream fishing and popped out and this guy had just finished suction dredging, so the stream was completely ruined for fishing, and you know, I was kind of looking, and he says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm going to fish." He said, "There's no fish in that stream." And I said, "Well, what have you been doing?" He said, "I've been mining for gold." And I said, "Okay, great." You know, and I'm just going to look. And I started kind of looking around, and he pulled his truck out and then got out and had to make sure I knew that it was his claim. So he pissed on a tree right in front of me. And I said, "Okay, thanks." You know, he said, "This is my claim." All right, good. So these guys, they're very possessive of where they're at, even though that was federal forest land and it was public land and I had a right to be there. So,
just to take this a little bit outside of the local arena, we were talking before the show about the North Fork Clearwater over in Idaho. Excuse me. Talk a little bit about what you observed over there and what came of that.
I didn't actually observe that, but I had just come back from a trip with some friends, and we go there every year or so, and we love the North Fork, and that's a shameless plug for one of the last bastions of West Slope cutthroat in a native state. And he had forwarded to me an email that had been forwarded to him by a fishing club in northern Idaho who had observed that there were a whole bunch of signs, these mining claim signs that Kim talked about, that had been tacked up on Forest Service land along the North Fork of the Clearwater, saying mining claim, no trespassing. So this fly fishing group was pretty much up in arms saying, wait a minute, I thought this was U.S. Forest public land. So I was horrified because, well, frankly, I love that area. So I had called the Forest Service office in I think it's in Weippe, it might be in Orofino, and I got bounced through a couple of transfers to another gentleman who, in fact, had just been up there and had physically removed every one of those signs, tacked up a sheet that said, this is federal land, here's my card, if you have a problem with that, call me. And so, in fact, some of the miners did. And I think Kim can take this up from a legal perspective, but the bottom line is this is not just a Washington phenomenon. It's happening all over the place.
Yeah, so the rest of the story in the Clearwater is the Forest Service challenged those mining claims under a Forest Service, under a statute, federal statute, basically saying, listen, forests should be managed for multiple use. You guys are trying to say that we can't allow fishermen to go on the North Fork. We can't allow, rafters to go on. And the miners forced them to have to actually litigate this. And that's the other thing about these miners is they're very litigious. But they litigated it, and the Forest Service won and basically invalidated those claims, which was amazing. I mean, that's just an amazing scenario that happened. So. And a lot of that is due to the fly fishing community, again, really pushed on that because it's such a sacred land for fly fishermen, if you like, West Slope.
So has just
cutthroat.
There not been much effort from the conservation segment that's tried to fight it in Washington yet? Is that why we're kind of behind?
That's exactly right. I mean, when Kent and I started talking about this, about 9 months ago, we kind of did a dog and pony show and went to at least one conservation organization here trying to get them to take it up so that we wouldn't have to do it ourselves. And, we never heard back from them. I mean, I think this is not global climate change. It's not, saving massive amounts of timberland. To them, it's a small issue. To us, it's a huge issue in terms of the cumulative impacts and how it impacts things that we're quite passionate about.
Should we name that group?
No.
No.
No. We want them to be our friends.
Well, that's maybe we can convince them to get on board.
Yeah.
We'll trade names after.
We'll trade names afterwards.
We're very diplomatic here at the Open Fly Podcast.
Yes, we are.
We have irons and a lot of fires here.
Yeah. One thing I will say is in the most successful ways that these mining regulations have been challenged have been by grassroots efforts. It's been small groups in Oregon that challenged it. It was, and we'll be working with the tribes. So it was the tribes and Trout Unlimited in California, which is not a small grassroots group, but they really did some small grassroots stuff. And up here so far, that's kind of how we're going to take it on. One of the things the miners love to say is that we're greedy, that we're doing this only for money, that we're getting tons of grants, that we're getting
basically everything that they encompass.
Oh yeah. So,
isn't their whole thing kind of they want their gold and
right.
and
Yeah.
they want it all for themselves and nobody else.
Right. So whatever they call
That's
us.
funny.
Yeah. So which Ken and I would love it if we could get this for money, but we're just two people trying to do this.
With an agenda.
Yeah. With an
Yeah.
We here at the Open Fly Podcast are in it for the money, just so everybody knows.
Yeah.
So when an outfit sets up and starts dredging in an area, obviously because it's a mobile operation, they can float downstream or drag their boat upstream. How long do they tend to set up in one spot without moving?
Oh, that's a really good question. One of the problems
Thank you.
is they set up.
I'm known for some really
Really?
good questions.
Oh, good.
One of our listeners pointed that out.
They did. That was the Tight-Lined Tales of a Fly Fisherman blog. You can check them out.
So now I have to live up to my
Now
billing.
every time you have to at least ask one.
At least one.
Okay, well that's a good question.
Thank you.
Anytime. A lot of these guys, they camp by these rivers for weeks, if not months at a time, with no sanitary facilities. So, just imagine for a few moments. We could buy them Depends. Maybe that's part of what we could do for the
Soon
regulation.
to be a sponsor of
Right,
the Open Fly.
in digitized Cameo Depends. So they'll camp out for a long time. They'll fuel those engines in stream, so you'll get gas, going on those engines right in these small little streams. So usually they'll be there. I observed one on Blewett Pass last year. These guys were camped out for two months, which, usually the Forest Service, in my heyday, I'd try to camp out in a Forest Service parking lot for overnight and I'd get shooed off. So, these guys seem to have it pretty good.
So a couple summers ago on the Yakima, I was having lunch on the riverbank, and I heard this motor starting up, and it's right at the particular bend in the river where there's a small stream that comes in up above, which is good spawning ground for some of the anadromous fish in the area. And it's unusual. It was unusual to me because you can't have a motorized craft on the Yakima River above Rosa Dam access area. I looked upriver, and here was this pontoon-style boat. Looked about the size of a 4x8 sheet of plywood with a big motor on it, and a couple guys in wetsuits and a big suction hose. And the river was at 4,000 CFS, so pumping right along for the Yakima. Big and fast. And they were out of control. They lost this thing in the current, and this thing went floating downstream. What should if you're on a piece of water where you see something like this happening, and especially when you know the regulation is no motorized craft, is that enough to call for enforcement? What kind of resources can a fly fisherman have? What number should they have to call so that if they see something, they can call and report it to get something administrative going in terms of this?
Yeah, at this point, probably what they were doing was not illegal unless they were working outside the work windows or didn't have a permit. Mm-hmm. So, literally, probably there was nothing you could do.
So motorized craft doesn't apply?
Doesn't apply.
Propulsion.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing that concerns me, although I haven't found any, I haven't even started doing the research on this, is, we're worried about invasive species when we talk about crafts being on water, right? Mm-hmm. We're all very careful. We get them inspected, all those kinds of things. We have these guys are transporting these suction dredges all up and down in Idaho.
About that aspect of it.
So you've got an invasive species issue that we now need to also start thinking about what's going to be happening. And so, there's a ton of stuff that hasn't been thought out yet by our state regulatory agencies, and it's something that's critical. But but if you do see somebody and you think that they are doing something illegal, I would suggest calling the WDFW officers.
I think some of those crafts are even using water as a ballast in some of those floating tubes. So if you fill up water from a watershed that has an invasive species in it, and then you take it to another place and you're not regulated by that, that doesn't seem onerous to me, because I have to do that with my boats when I go over state lines.
Right, exactly. And one of the things that we're finding now with these miners is, so in California they have a moratorium, right? So the moratorium was no suction dredging. So this guy in California decided, hey, I can figure out, I'll disconnect my sluice from my suction dredge, and it's no longer a suction dredge. So he put the sluice on the shore, and he got, even more pipe, and he would suck it up and then run it through the sluice on the shore. So he would, found his little loophole, and he was doing it. And again, talk about taxpayer dollars. So it took a month of lobbying from somebody to get the state legislature to, redefine what a suction dredge was.
Mm-hmm.
That had to happen, and then that shut it down. So now this same guy has decided, well, okay, let's not suck. Let's blast. So now his new thing is he's got a whole website where he's teaching these guys how to blast into these streams and then basically pull up the stuff that he's loosening up and run it through a sluice.
Blast is in like dynamite?
Yeah, well, no, actually he's doing water blasting. So like high-pressure water blasting.
Oh.
Yeah, pretty amazing.
Gotcha. So we're
That doesn't suck, it blows.
No,
Yeah.
that's exactly right.
kind of hitting our time here. So if you have anything else that we haven't hit on yet that you want to touch on before we close this up, now's the time.
Only that there are loopholes that are legislated that literally handcuff the Department of Fish and Wildlife and prevent them from learning more about who's mining, where and when, and enforcing common sense regulations to prohibit activity that allows miners to operate on a different plane than fishermen. Our bottom line is, if a stream is closed to fishing, it needs to be closed to mining. Not open for a different reason. This is not private property that was appropriated by miners. It's public property, and we all own it.
And I think the last thing is come join us on fishnotgold.org or on our Facebook site. And, you'll get lots more information and a chance to work with us on this issue.
Is there do you have anywhere on your website where people can donate to the cause or anything like that?
Not yet, because we are, even though we're greedy, we still haven't figured out how to do that yet.
Okay.
There are ways.
Indeed.
So send your money to the Open Fly podcast, and we'll take a healthy cut and then pass on the remnants. Maybe send us gold. We'll trade for buffalo robes
Yeah,
and
gold.
beads.
If you're going to mail us something, it's got to be gold, not fish.
Good trade.
Good trade.
Good trade.
Real quickly before we cut them free, you mentioned that this was an issue as far east as Maine. Mm-hmm. Can you touch on that real quickly? How big is the issue back east?
Well, we don't really know that yet. I remember a number of years ago, I talked to a woman who was a custom bamboo fly rod maker back there, and she was, noticing that it was starting to happen on some of the rivers back in Maine. So we just recently got a copy of legislation that was introduced in the Maine state legislature where they're trying to ban it on some of the critical rivers there. We haven't really focused in on that yet, but it'll be good to kind of get that information. Yeah. British Columbia, their regulations are so tight, nobody's getting permits to suction dredge nor blow.
Excellent. But maybe if we have any listeners out there from our audience of 9, if you are from the New England states and you're aware of any suction dredging going on, write to us.
And we will read it on the air.
We will.
In a very serious manner.
Yep.
We might not make fun of you.
Possibly. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming in. It was a great segment. I learned quite a bit. I mean, I knew it happened. It wasn't until this last week or so when we booked the show that I was really aware of, everything that was kind of involved with it. I didn't realize the severity of the situation. So, cool. I'm glad I got to sit in and listen in on it.
Yeah, I think the key here is obviously just holding everybody to the same standards.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it sounds to me like they're doing a massive amount more damage to the streams and everything than a fisherman would. Yet they're just kind of got a free for all. So
yeah.
I know for sure that this has definitely changed my behavior in terms of the topic. I mean, we used to sit around at TV at night and watch the Alaskan Gold shows and the Gold in the Jungle shows, all the while in the back of my mind going, that's a lot of damage that's being done to those streams. But that's Alaska. It's a long ways away, and that's a big, big place. What's that really going to affect? Well, it was a slow march west that started this, and it might be a slow march back east that we have to take to get this to change. So that's my takeaway. It's changed my behavior.
Not in our backyard.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, we're going to wrap this up. So thanks again. You can check them out at fishnotgold.org. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And there's a Facebook. Any other social medias that you guys partake in?
Well, Kent's got me tweeting now, so I'm still trying to figure out what hashtags to do. But I'll do a hashtag, the open fly, something. I'll figure that out today.
Sweet. Appreciate that.
We follow you. Believe you follow us.
I do.
Cool.
Follow the leader.
Indeed. All right. Well, we're going to go to break here. When we come back, Derek is going to lead us into instead of doing guide segments this week, we're going to talk to a couple designers of boats and how their stories and their philosophies have kind of designed the new modern fly fishing craft that gets you down the river. So it's going to be a cool segment, and we'll get into that when we go back, when we get back. So this is the Open Fly Podcast. We'll be right back.
Now back to the Open Fly.
All right, for this week, episode number 8, we're going to change up guide stories a little bit and take a step back and talk about one of the most important tools that a guide could have, and other than a fly rod, of course, and flies, is a drift boat. So we're going to take a kind of a historical look at the use of the drift boat all the way from the Mackenzie style, the flat boat, all of that, and kind of get a perspective on not necessarily which drift boat you should choose and which one you should buy, but kind of give 2 examples and 2 perspectives from some of the leading trends in terms of design and the use of the drift boat. So to that, we're going to have Shelley Emmer from Adipose Boatworks on the line to talk about Adipose. Good morning, Shelley.
Good morning. How are you?
Really well.
I'm okay. Thanks for asking.
And that's Evan.
I'm fine, thanks for not asking.
So we're talking about the evolution of drift boat design. So tell us the Adipose story. Why does this boat exist, and why was it designed?
The Adipose came about, well, Tracy Allen, one of the designers and owners, he started guiding here. He's from North Carolina. Started guiding out here in the West in Montana about in the 80s. And the Western boats that he was rowing were harder to row. You know, they're the draft. You have to be in heavier water. You can't maneuver to get over to the sides. Hard to see over the bow, and wind after rowing day in, day out, you're getting your butt kicked. And so Tracy slowly started writing his ideas down and getting it to, and so his first boats were put into production in the 90s. That's where he's dropping the sides. And him and Mike got together, about in 2009. Mike had rowed the boat once. And by then, Tracy had several prototypes. Anyway, I'm so sorry. They had several prototypes, and then Adipose was started in 2009 once Mike and Tracy got their heads together and talked it out. And then Tracy's designs have evolved so much from the 90s, and now we have the Adipose. It's a lower-sided skiff, straight chine, different from the Western style of drift boat with the curved ones. Mm-hmm. And it's stable, wider, and lower-sided. So it helps with the wind. It helps with rowing. The draft is way shallower draft.
So lowering the sides just helps with wind, and is it to lighten the boat up, or is that what are all the reasons for lowering the sides? 'Cause it seems like that's kind of a common theme with what you guys have going on with the design. What's the advantage there?
The advantage is, well, it's definitely lower. It's lighter. Our boat weighs about 475 pounds decked out.
Is that with a cooler of beer? light beer?
Yeah, we switched to the lighter beer. So when going to this skiff design, we're able to achieve more volume in the stern and the bow of the boat, which establishes a greater footprint in the water, and it allows us to run the lower sides.
Cool.
So with that, we balance the seat placement, and the display. It makes for better displacement for the watercraft. It's more balanced, so you can get out of the way with more and have the lower sides.
So is it fair to say that the design that you're currently using now is the result of some collaboration between the 2 founders of the company, but you also have an ambassador program in which you've got professional guides out using your boat. Tell me about how you're incorporating that feedback into the design and how you made changes based off of what your users are saying that needs to be different about the boat.
We take the words from the ambassadors. I mean, some of our ambassadors are in the water over 265 days on the water. And we definitely take what they have to say into consideration. Some of the guys want lids to go over their rod storage so they can lock them up. Other than that, the trailer, they give us trailer pointers. Hey, I'd like this. We definitely take their feedback into consideration.
One of the discussions when you start talking about the type of drift boat that might be best for someone to buy is functionality. So, I know that I've seen a lot of adipose skiffs on the river I guide on here on the Yakima. I've seen them on the Missouri. Is the design anomaly here in terms of the big western rivers, or why is the skiff design becoming so popular with guides and with anglers?
Well, it's definitely a working man's boat. The adipose is. It's designed by a guide for guides. You have the pedestal seats that gives you the walk-around functionality. So the guides, they don't have their clients having to jump over bench seats, especially if they're hard to walk or something elderly. The adipose is wider. It's more stable. You can actually have your rods run down, the rod trays run the length of the boat, 10-foot trays. And you can step on them. So you can step all around the boat. And you can have 3 big people actually on one side of the boat netting a fish because everybody gets excited. And it's stable. We've actually tried to tip our adipose in and under with 3 people on the side. It doesn't go in. It's awesome. So the stability for the guides, it's less work for the guides to fight with getting rods and people, clients, nets. It's just a more efficient way for the guides to work. It's their office. They need the best efficiency ever.
Yeah, Derek pointed out that we're starting to see more and more adipose skiffs out here on our waters, and I know that as recently as maybe 2 or 3 years ago, you didn't see many people running skiffs. It was all low-sided Mackenzie-style hulls. Yet back in Montana, the skiffs have been prevalent for a long time. So somebody is doing some really effective marketing to spread the word of the skiff, out farther west. What has Adipose done in the last few years to kind of up their marketing game to inform people about the benefits of their style boat?
Well, definitely word of mouth from our guides and friends that use the boats. The fly shows, the fishing shows. Social media is a huge help. You see people all over that with just pictures in the boats. Our boats are pretty. They photograph well.
So you are all over the Twitters?
I'm not a Twitter person. I don't get it.
See? I was just talking like a half hour ago on the show here about how I don't get Twitter. So I
don't get it.
We're friends now. We have that connection. Kirk gets.
That's really good.
Kirk gets Twitter. I don't. But move on. I've already driven that point home.
Sweet. No, we definitely Facebook. Just word of mouth, Facebook, and just everybody seems to communicate. Obviously, meeting people at shows. That's where I met Derek. Was at Denver. He's awesome. So it's just more shows, more people, the visibility, and just being cool.
So the boats kind of sell themselves, essentially.
They definitely sell themselves. I am not doing. There's nothing. These boats sell themselves. These guys do not need me here, which I shouldn't.
Do you want to admit that?
Yeah, we can edit that out.
I should definitely not admit that. It's just a better, efficient rowing machine. I mean, they're 30% easier to row than a normal.
So I'm going to interrupt. So what is the main difference between a Mackenzie style bottom versus a skiff? Like, is there a difference in the rocker, or is it the width of the boat, or what is it differentiates a skiff versus
didn't we already kind of cover it?
I don't think did we? No, we didn't really say how it differs though.
When we're talking about the traditional Western style of
right, we talked about the Western style drift boat, but we didn't. I don't think we really talked about what makes a skiff different than that, or what features there are. Like what makes a Mackenzie style Western drifter, and what makes a skiff, or these new styles? What is the difference, and maybe some of the advantages and disadvantages of each?
Well, the main differences between the drifts and the skiffs. Mm-hmm. I mean, the drift boats are traditional true tops or a football-shaped bottom, and they're generally higher in the water. They have more of a rocker to them. The skiffs, we have more surface area on the water, lower on the sides, greater displacement in the front and the rear of the boat.
Okay.
It tracks better. It's easier to maneuver. You can see out of it.
How does it do in whitewater?
That's what I was just getting there, yeah.
Now, we do have guys that are running in the whitewater. We have videos on our website. And as I would say they do really well as long as they know, number one, what they're doing, where they are, and they know the water.
Right.
We have guys out here running Yankee Jim. We have guys down on the green running the red area.
Do you have any guys like on the Middle Fork Salmon or anything like that, something that can get a little hairier?
That I don't know. I don't know, but I definitely would advise somebody to know their boat and know the water before saying, yeah, you can do it.
Right, yeah, and that's something we were going to get to as well, is that, just because a boat can do it isn't necessarily, that's not an invitation for you to just, trust the boat to do it for you.
Right. I got a great idea, though. A good idea. If you guys can deck out one of your skiffs in the Open Fly podcast logo, Derek and Evan and I will take a multi-day trip down the Middle Fork of the Salmon during runoff and
we'll report back.
See how the boat does.
Yeah, we can take camera equipment. We'll take the GoPros.
That'd be fun. I want to join you on that.
Okay.
Your recovery effort.
Yeah.
So that brings up, I think, an important part of it is that, boater safety. And that's oftentimes one of the things that's overlooked the most is, people think that they buy a drift boat for a river. And, curiously enough, a lot of times these boats end up on the bottom of the river because they're just not, there's a certain level of skill that comes into play with throwing a drift boat. So from a safety standpoint, what are some of the words of wisdom that you have? I mean, do you have any stories about, of your own experience in sinking boats or in, kind of figuring out those strange pieces of drift boat operation?
I've had some scary times in the previous boat that I was associated with. I don't want to badmouth any brand, of course, but the plugs were on the bottom of the boat, and we would have a habit of leaving the boat to do our own shuttle, and I came back, and my ex-spouse had passed out in his vehicle, so I had to pull the boat out of the water, but the plugs had been knocked out, so the boat was taking on water, and that's from the plugs being on the bottom of the boat. That's one thing. Ours are on the side, so that was a scary thing, but my boat is so forgiving. I bought my Outpost last year, and I've gotten away with things that I shouldn't have been able to get away with. I'm not saying that's a good thing or not. Definitely.
Yeah.
But our boat is definitely a lot more forgiving. People get excited. They rush to one side to see the fish. I couldn't do that in the previous boat I was in. Easier to row. If I hit rocks, I've hit rocks with my boat that normally would have tipped another boat over that I had been in before, but I wasn't rowing. I'm not making any sense. I'm running around in circles. I've hit rocks with my boat that would have knocked over my last boat.
Mm-hmm. I've done that before. I have a friend of mine had me row his buddy's drift boat down the Skycoma, which is where we live, and there's a pretty gnarly boulder garden right at the beginning of this float, and I told him, said, hey, we're going to go through this boulder garden, we're going to run the rocker over a rock, we're going to slide over it, and I'm going to spin the boat around and get around these rocks. Is your boat good with that? Are you good with me hitting a rock in your boat? And he's like, yeah, sure, no problem. Failed to tell me that he hadn't treated the bottom of his boat with Glovit or any other material in years, and hit that first rock and it stuck, literally stuck to the rock, and spun me around and in the opposite direction I wanted to go, slammed me sideways on another rock, tipped the boat completely on its side, dumped my buddy out in the front of the boat, and we kind of grabbed his wader straps and pulled him back in and kicked the boat back over. But yeah, that was a pretty crazy experience, and one I definitely don't want to go through again. So your boats are fiberglass, right?
We do have glass boats, and we do offer a Teflon coating to help slide. Mm-hmm. It's like that's an option, but we do have glass.
Yeah, because one of the advantages of glass is that they slide over things like that without as much treatment. Because aluminum just sticks to rocks, and it sticks very well. So yeah,
that would be scary.
How long are your boats, Shelley? A typical Mackenzie style fiberglass boat made today is 16. What are your skiffs tape out at?
Are you talking about the height side?
No, the length, the bow length.
Oh, I'm sorry, 15 foot 4 inches.
15.4.
Yeah,
pretty
15 foot
precise.
center line.
Excellent.
Cool. Either of you guys have any
Yeah,
more
we have-
questions for Shelley, or?
No, what do you see coming in terms of, and don't give away any trade secrets, but what's the future of what Adipose is doing in terms of drift boat design? And the discussion is certainly shifting away from when people hear the word drift boat, they're not thinking so much anymore as the double ender, continuous rocker, aluminum, wood, or fiberglass boat. Yeah,
Basically like the one you're looking at the window here in the studio.
Yeah. So what's the trend? What do you guys see happening in terms of the drift boat industry?
In the drift boat industry or for Adipose?
Well, both. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're definitely keeping with this design. So far, it's proven. We'll evolve as we need to with guide suggestions, or I know we're coming out with another skiff. It's smaller. We actually own the South Fork skiff mold. Those boats will be in production within a month or two, I'm hoping. And then maybe eventually we'll get into a higher-sided boat. That's way down the road if that even happens. But right now we're pretty busy just doing the flows, the Adipose skiffs.
And you're able to do a lot of customization. I know I've seen pictures on your Facebook page about people come in and they sign the garage door when they walk out of there with the boat in different colors and variations. You're able to make something exactly what somebody wants, right?
Yes, we can definitely. We get colors, and if people bring in a paint chip, any color within 10% we can do, or else we do customized boat wraps. Like we have some boats with Derek DeYoung's artwork on them.
Or with an Open Fly Podcast logo on it.
Did you say
That would be
Did you say Derek Young Designs or?
Yeah.
Derek DeYoung.
Oh, Derek DeYoung.
Young.
That other
We could do
guy.
Derek Young,
Other guy.
Yeah.
I think Derek Young takes deposits for DeYoung. I don't know. No.
I do.
Well,
I do. Yes.
after this, you'll just be flooded with requests for Open Fly Podcast logo boats. So I'm just kind of giving you the heads up.
That would be awesome. But we can do any boat. We have a John Deere boat in the back. I don't know if you've seen that, but anything that
I
you
actually
want
painted
can
my
be done.
aluminum. I have an Alumaweld built in the 80s, and I used John Deere paint on it this last time I covered it up. Actually, the paint can said John Deere tractor paint. And I was like, this has got to be tough enough to handle the river, so I just painted my boat in that.
That is awesome. But we can do anything you could want.
Or Kirk,
that's what we try to.
an Olive the
Make
Woolly
everything-
Bugger wrapped boat.
Hey, there we go.
Yeah. That would be cool.
Possibilities are endless. So, Shelley, what is it that you do for the company specifically?
I do, I take care of the office. I do all of the accounting, paperwork, payroll, sales, internet. I go to the shows. I transport boats as needed across the nation. I step in whenever needed. I do a lot. I love it.
Are you going to be at the Wasatch Expo down in Salt Lake in a couple weeks?
No, I have to be in. I don't know about that one.
Oh, we should be.
I should be. I will definitely write that down and look into that.
It's pretty cool.
Wasatch. Writing that down. I'm supposed to be at the Orvis Rendezvous. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but Orvis, and then I think I'm going to Red's Rendezvous.
Orvis.
We'll see you at the Orvis Rendezvous in Missoula on April 3 through 5.
That's the Orvis endorsed fly fishing guide of the year 2011. Talking to you right there.
And you said Reds, huh?
I may be going to Red's. That is in the works. I was talked to about that today. Mike will be going to the East Coast to New York for an Orvis thing, and I may be going to Red's. And then Idaho Fly Fishing Show I'll be at. And then, of course, Poppies in September. And there's a few more, I think.
Nice.
Cool. Maybe our listeners will come out and tell you that they heard about you on the Open Fly podcast. Yeah. It's going to be a new era of Adipose Boat Works.
So, Shelley, I know that your personal boat stands out because it's a fairly intense shade of orange.
Yes.
You're a marked woman on the river, so you have to behave yourself. You can't really blend in with that boat, can you?
No, I can't. I definitely need to watch myself and watch my etiquette on the water because they'll find me.
Well,
it's almost Open Fly Podcast Orange.
Really?
But you have a name for it, right?
Yes, my boat's name is Ginger.
Ginger. Very nice.
Ginger, yep.
I
She has
always
her own
like-
Facebook page.
I always liked Marianne a little better, but Ginger was saucy.
What's this reference?
Gilligan.
Television show before you're born called Gilligan's Island.
No, I've heard of it. I am Kirk's old enough to be my dad, so
Yeah, we figured that. That's awkward.
it is awkward.
Millionaire.
I wouldn't have made a very good parent
And his wife.
based on how Evans turned out. I failed.
Yes.
star.
Yeah.
The professor.
Okay, well, this is
So, Shelley, how can people find you? Give us all of your details, websites, phone numbers, Facebook, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, well, you can find us on Facebook, Adipose Boat Works, or my Facebook is Shelley Emer, E-H-M-E-R, or Ginger's Facebook is Ginger the Adipose Boat. Our website is, of course, www.adiposeboatworks.com, but then we have another website, adiposeboatworks.co. That's where our videos are and other pages. Have a couple different things going on there. And then our office is, did you want that too?
Sure.
Nah, I don't. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead.
Confusing me. I feel like anyway, 406-992-1519.
and that's in Montana,
Helena, Montana. That's where the adipose are made. Yeah.
state capital.
It is, actually. It's pretty unique living here. Yeah.
So if
I
there
moved here from Island Park.
were no wild fish left, no fish that had an adipose, would you have to change the name of the company? So are you Fin-Clipped Boats Company?
No, I don't see us changing our name. So
Okay.
Well,
it causes
just keep
too much
that. Keep that.
disruption.
Just keep that in the back of your mind, just in case that day comes. You can take
not
that
gonna
idea.
happen.
We won't charge you for it.
Fin-Clipped.
You guys are hysterical.
Yeah.
This isn't our best work.
All right. Well,
I'm sorry if I was bad. I'm so sorry.
Worst interview ever.
we have to be punished.
Oh my gosh! Well, come up to the mill. I'll make it up to you. I'll row you down the river a couple times. How's that?
Okay.
Best interview
There you
ever.
go. Best
We're
interview.
there.
All right. Well, we're going to let
Come on
Shelley
out.
go. We're going to let Shelley go, and then we've got Link Jackson from Stream Tech Boats coming up next. So let's go to break, and then we'll see you on the water, Shelley.
All right. Thank you. You take care.
All right.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Cool. Shelley from Adipose Boat Works. So yeah, like Derek said, when we get back, we're going to talk about Stream Tech boats. Do either of you have any experience with Stream Tech boats?
No.
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 Nope.
Just don't have one sitting in your garage.
Have you been stalking me?
Oh, I do have one sitting in my garage, but very limited experience with it. Makes me happy when I go out to the
I
beer.
don't have a jacket that says Stream Tech Boats on.
No, Derek is definitely wearing his Stream Tech jacket. Yeah, I'm the only one in the room without a Stream Tech boat. I've got my 1987 Alumaweld Drifter. It's seen some things and some stuff.
Did you get your trailer figured out?
Yeah, I found a dude that's going to help me weld the fender back on. My trailer is such a piece of crap. My trailer was built in 1965, I think, by some guy at home. So it's like a bunch of steel pipes welded together and not very well. So I was pulling it back from the Skagit last month and got pretty close to getting back to home. And I look in my rearview mirror and there's like sparks flying everywhere. And I'm like, I knew that was coming. I thought it was going to be a lot worse. I thought it was like one of my axles broke or something, and the fender fell off. So
Boat trailers always provide a certain level of anxiety and entertainment for owners. Had a few fail on me in the past.
I've seen a few fail myself.
Boat trailers are no fun.
Nope. We need to get a boat trailer show together. Find out what
No, that would be riveting.
what drives your design philosophy for your boat trailers, and why do they still suck?
Imagine producing the trailer for that show.
Oh,
Get that?
that was good. I see what you
Ooh,
did there.
hey, nice! I saw what you did there.
Boat
So,
trailer.
all
It's
right.
like a
So
trailer boat.
instead of going to a commercial break, we're going to go to a couple of short clips that I recorded in January at the Somerset, New Jersey Fly Fishing Show with two other boat companies, just to kind of get their take on everything. I interviewed Outcast Boats, who's one of the leaders in personal flotation, so your one-man boats and stuff like that, and kind of give their take and their story on what drove their design of those boats, and then kind of a newcomer in the hard boats, kind of like along the lines of Adipose, which is Stealthcraft, and kind of what they're doing, because kind of like Adipose, they're kind of doing their own thing, totally different philosophy, and it's going to be cool to kind of hear what they have to say about it. So, all right, we're going to go to that, and we'll talk to you on the other side. All right, I am at the Somerset Fly Fishing Show with Chris Callanan. Callanan, you just told me that, and I messed it up already. I told you. All right. He's from Outcast Boats, probably one of the leaders in one-man fishing boats. And we're going to talk a little bit about the trends in one-man fishing boats and what to look for and all that. So, Chris, thanks for talking to us.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right, so tell us a little bit about what Outcast is doing, moving from framed boats to the frameless. It seems like that's kind of a new trend recently, and let us know a little bit about what you're gaining by going with frameless and maybe some of the downsides you guys are trying to overcome, but just overall the main thing with frameless boats and why that's the new trend.
Actually, the main reason is the boats are half the weight. Our typical framed one-person pontoon boat weighs about 70 pounds. The frameless boats weigh 35. And it's just way easier for guys to get in and out of the water. You can get to put-ins or takeouts that you couldn't do before. Just because they're so light, we have the handles at the balance point, so they balance nice. The boats handle on moving in still water the same as a framed boat. We have 3 versions. We have a 7-footer, an 8-footer, and a 10-footer. You can't tell the difference, particularly in moving water. We're a whitewater company called Air, so we test all the boats in Class 3 whitewater from a fishing perspective, and they handle just as well or just as stable as a frame boat.
So the advantage of the frame boat previously was strengthening up the rowing. You know, you were actually had something to push against. But now the technology is to where you can row and not be flexing the pontoons much, right? Is that kind of what it is?
Correct. It's basically U-shaped. We use our raft floor design that's up a little from the water, so that's kind of the base. The other key was the oar system, and that was always hard. We use this pinned oar system, which has always been used on dinghies for a long time, but they weren't strong enough. We took it to our manufacturer and we modified the existing one. Our pin is grooved in a couple different places, so it sits in the mold a lot better. It doesn't pull off. It's nice and strong. Actually, this oar system in many ways is superior than the frame boats because you can tuck the oars down and out of the way. So cool. If you want to kick them, the oars are out of the way and it's not a line catcher. So in a lot of ways, it's a better system.
Yeah. So you and I talked briefly recently about there are certain boats out there, and you'll have customers that come up and say, my boat can do Class 5. Do your boats do Class 5? What do you have to say about that, and why is that a pretty big deal, and why you kind of shy away from that?
Well, being a whitewater company, we know Class 5 whitewater is dangerous. If you get out of the boat, you'll die. And I can float a float tube down Class 5 and it's fine, but it's the person on the oars basically. Yeah. They are the materials that you use in a single-person pontoon boat or frameless boat are just not strong enough for Class 5 water.
Right.
So we test. We're a whitewater company. We test all our boats in Class 3, which is more than enough for our fishing applications. But it's really somebody on the oars. We don't want to provide a false confidence by telling someone this is Class 5. They go in there and they get hurt or even
because
worse.
This boat is Class 5. You're able to do it. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's false. No one should do Class 5 in a fishing boat.
Correct. We agree. Are there any other safety tips for a personal boat that you can let people know about?
No, I think the one thing that fishermen don't do enough is they don't take PFDs.
Yeah.
And that's really important. But depending on the situation, and I know guys get hot and they're uncomfortable, but the inflatable PFDs are really comfortable and they're right there. So I think it's always important to have a PFD and make sure that it's easy access because you're not going to fall out on purpose.
Right. And you guys also do float tubes, too, in addition to your rowing boats. Is there anything special you guys are doing there that's new? Or
no, float tube technology has stayed about the same. We still try to, it's all about materials. We still try to do quality materials. Ours are up out of the water, so you're higher and drier, which makes your fishing day a little bit better. So
yeah, cool. All right, I think that about covers it. Chris, thanks so much for talking to us, and hopefully be able to talk to you more after this interview at the show here.
Great, thanks for coming by.
Yep, bye. I'm talking to Steve Cornett from Stealthcraft Boats. Steve, tell us a little bit about what you do with Stealthcraft.
I build boats, so I do a lot of the finish work, a lot of lamination, pretty much a little bit of everything.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what's driving the design about these new fiberglass boats. Obviously, Stealthcraft is doing a lot of things that a lot of the other companies aren't. Tell us a little bit about some of the stuff you guys are doing differently and what's kind of the motivation behind that.
Well, for one, we do plastic core in there. It gives it a little bit more. If you hit something, it gives a little bit more. It's also a lot more buoyant and allows you to float higher, clear more water, and it's a lot more responsive than an aluminum boat or another boat would be.
All right. So I noticed you guys are big, look like you're big believers in the wooden oars. Tell me a little bit about why you picked the wooden oars over some of the composites and other ones that are out there, because it seems like you see a lot of composites out on the water today, but it seems like there's a pushback to the wooden oars. Tell me what some of the advantages are to the wooden oars.
Wooden ours are a lot lighter, so it causes you a lot less work in a day. Also, to counterweight a wood oar is a lot easier. You don't need quite as much weight to counterweight them because they don't weigh as much overall. And also, they're still very strong and durable. So probably the biggest thing is just being light and not working too hard at it.
Cool. So if we have some listeners that are trying to decide what direction they want to go, they definitely know they want a boat that can haul some people and can anchor up and fish. And they're trying to decide between aluminum, glass, which is what you guys are in that category, the kind of glass boats, or an inflatable. Obviously, there's a time and a place for everything. Which guys are going to be after this kind of boat?
Anybody who has a lot of skinny water to get through, anything that's really shallow. Also, the hull on a fiberglass boat is extremely strong, extremely light. It's very responsive. The boat itself is going to respond a lot better than an aluminum boat will. And also, just for the simple fact of repairs, it's extremely easy to repair a fiberglass boat if something were to happen. Overall, the fiberglass boat performs a lot better due to just being lighter, a little more responsive.
Obviously, out on the water, moving water safety is an issue. With these types of boats, are there some safety features or other things that somebody that's safety conscious will want to know about it?
Well, yeah, it's really important to have a nice, stable boat, and also at the same time, it's important to have a boat that's buoyant, very buoyant. So with the fiberglass, you're floating a lot higher. Like I say, you're clearing a lot more, so therefore you eliminate a lot of things you would have hit or situations that you would have got into. Also, if you get into a pinch, a fiberglass boat, it back rows nicer, it swivels nicer, so you can get out of that pinch a lot faster. You can respond to that real quick.
Cool. All right, Steve, I'll let you get going here. It's end of day 3 at the Somerset Fly Fishing Show, so Steve and everybody else here is about done talking to people, so I think they're going to let him get out of here and get on home to Michigan. So, Steve, thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you for waiting. Your patience is appreciated. Please hold the line. We'll be right back with you.
I love hold music.
Lively little tune there.
Hey, Kirk, dance a little closer to the mic so everybody can.
That's nice.
Hello?
Link, it's Derek.
Hello, Derek.
The whole Open Fly podcast gang is here, and we want to talk about StreamTech boats today.
Well, it's a topic that's near and dear to my heart, so I could probably help you there.
All right. Well, we're gonna get right into it then. So I've got Kirk here. Kirk owns one of your boats.
Hey, Link.
Hi, Kirk.
As a caveat, I too own one of your boats.
I do.
And then
both.
That's right. And then Evan is here as well. So that's the crowd.
And there's Evan, who does not own a StreamTech boat.
Evan?
I'm not in that tax bracket yet.
It's life's short.
It is.
So am I.
Hey.
So,
Kirk, I think you got to generate an insult for yourself now.
So, Link, we're recording and we're talking about StreamTech boats. So, we've taken a couple of segments and opportunities today to talk about the Adipose skiffs and then a couple other manufacturers. We've talked to someone from Outcast as well as somebody from a company called Stealthcraft. So, we want to hear the StreamTech boat story, how it originated, and the future of drift boat design from your perspective as the owner and designer of StreamTech boats.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll approach this from, maybe three different directions here.
Hey, Link, are you on a speakerphone by chance?
I am.
Can you Can you be on not speakerphone?
Pick it up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't record. Oh, yeah.
You sound much younger.
Yeah. Yeah, speakerphone doesn't record well.
I'm really not. My daughter tells me I'm older than dirt. And dirt's older than rock, so.
And where does Kirk fit into that?
I'm right there.
Cool. All right. Now, well, let's restart here. Let's go ahead and kind of kick off and tell us the Stream Tech story from the beginning there.
Okay, well, I guess the beginnings, of course, are just a little teeny background on me. I was born in Montana, and my father...
I was born at a very young age.
Yeah, at a very young age. And my father had, in essence, run away from Minnesota at a young age and become a guide and outfitter up in Polson, Montana, up in the Bob Marshall area and all that. And so he was real big into the outdoors, and he took me down the Smith River my first time in a little homemade backpack, on a little Avon boat that he had. So I was, brought into this early, and as life went on, of course, I moved around and wound up in Boise. Did a lot of kayaking when I was younger, and there's a lot of really rough rivers around here, so whitewater got deep into my skin. I did my first trip down the Middle Fork at a salmon when I was in high school. I got a permit back then. You didn't have to be 18, and took a bunch of friends and just had a lot of fun. One of the things that really stands out in my mind in terms of my, basically just being immersed into drift boats was on the very first trip I did in high school, I ran into a group called the Helfrich family. And, if one is to read their history, they are, in essence, the original DNA of river drift boats for fly fishing. And they were running hard wood drift boats down the Middle Fork of the Salmon, wearing cowboy hats, no life jackets. I mean, this was really something to me. They were an anomaly in a world that had gone completely to rafts in those rough conditions. They still do this to this day, by the way.
Cowboy hats and all?
Yeah, although they wear life jackets, and they've certainly...
so they sold out, essentially.
They sold out, yeah, they did. It's 5 generations. If one does a little history, they actually have a little history on their webpage. It's kind of interesting, but the original Helfrich was Ben Helfrich. He settled in the McKenzie Valley in 1914, and he and buddies kind of invented the McKenzie River drift boats, if you will, the rockered style. They used a little wider stance than, say, today's boats do because they're better in whitewater. But his son, Prince Helfrich, really took it forward, pioneered a lot of first descents on rivers all over the Northwest in wood boats with a cowboy hat and no life jacket. I mean, the guy was brave. They used to actually line boats around some of the rougher stuff out in the Owyhee and Bruno country, and they'd put up cables, that they could clip onto and line their boats down some of these rapids. But anyways, Prince Helfrich guided Herbert Hoover down the McKenzie in 1931, and it's been said that he logged probably more than 50,000 river miles in a McKenzie riverboat. Anyways, that just in essence creates the foundation of what I'm doing today. They're still doing this, by the way. Ken Helfrich is just now passing the torch to his daughter, Kelsey Helfrich, who, funny story of her. Kelsey was, I think, 16 at the time the story happened. I showed up at the Middle Fork of the Salmon, put in really low water. Ranger was gone from the shack. The water was too low. Nobody was running from the top. And up pulls this big truck with a Helfrich boat on it, and this big strapping cowboy gets out, and he's got this little blonde girl who I'm thinking is his girlfriend, and I'm talking to him about boats because I had just created the first Stream Tech Green Drake, and I'd rode it down the river once, but anyways, I was telling them all about it, and of course she wasn't paying much attention. She was busy bossing him around, and I'm thinking, man, what a sassy little thing. And then I got to watching closely, and I came to realize little Kelsey was training this big strapping cowboy on the upper part of the river and taking him down in her drift boat. And I watched her on the water, and she's just so good. Everybody in that family is good. They get away with this because they're just plain good. But anyway, she's taken over the company. that kind of thing stuck in my head. I moved around a lot, created a construction company. I did 25 years as a general contractor. And when I was in Colorado, I had a cabin on the Gunnison River not far from Crested Butte. And the water would get real low in the fall. We had, the Arkansas River, Roaring Fork, a lot of rivers like that don't have much dam control on them, and they get real shallow in the fall. And I was just beating the hell out of the hard boats. And then I had kids. And once you have kids, I had taken my, the hard boats down really rough waters and, close to sunk them a few times, and that was all fine and dandy and fun. But once I had kids, I started worrying about the safety. So at the time, I had a lot of money. I had resources. I had a big company, and I started buying boats, looking for this, I'd call it the one boat that would maneuver like the hard boats, that would go in the really rough places, that would float high, that would have all the amenities that come on a hard boat with anchor systems and good leaning stations and all that sort of thing. And I tried pretty much everything that existed at the time, cat boats, and I'm not going to mention other companies' names of boats that I tried, but suffice to say I tried them all, and just none of them were really doing what I wanted. And so I think in maybe just a little bit of general contractor kind of arrogance, maybe, I said, okay, if nobody can do it right, I'm going to do it myself. So we set out to design a boat. And at the time, I had a friend named Craig Nichols, who was he was real big in the Merrill Lynch organization, had tons of clients, and he was selling them all fly rods and fly reels and all this stuff on the side because he just dabbled in the sporting goods equipment business, and he really kind of wanted to be the boat guy. So I did all the design work and figured out what this hull would be like, and it had to have a good rocker in it. It had to have a real flat floor instead of like the I-beam construction type floors that are somewhat like, say, an air mattress with ridges in them. And I needed something that would be very smooth, interface with water like fiberglass, and I really couldn't find it. So anyways, we designed it. I went looking for someone to build it, and at the time, the only option available that I discovered was a company in Boise called Moravia. So I'd flown up here, and I was talking to them, and they had what's called a drop stitch floor that's kind of unique in the industry. At least at that point in time, they were the only ones that had anything to do with it. It creates a very nice flat floor that you can inflate hard, that you can stand on, that I could rocker. And so this design that we'd come up could be built. And so they built me the boats, and we took them out and tried them, and sure enough, they rode really good. I mean, extraordinarily well, better than I expected even. And at that point in time, I was kind of done with it. Craig was going to sell boats, and somehow or another, time fast forward, here we are. I'm not in the construction business anymore, and I'm selling boats, and Craig's a stockbroker. And so that's kind of the 10,000 foot up look at this, I guess. As I went on, I dealt with people like, for instance, you, Derek, that, we're out on the water every day dealing with.
Actually, he's in studio today.
Yeah.
I took one day off.
Yeah, but on the water a lot. And I would solicit and sometimes have beat into my head against my will suggestions about ways that we could alter things. For example, I would hear from guides all the time that I was trying to sell a boat to that, we can't use inflatable boats because the clients don't like them. They're hard to move around on because of the crossbars, and, they're weird to stand on. And so I created these really nice wood decking rails that make a big platform that goes all the way down the side of the boat, and it makes it really easy to move around on the boat. And it also winds up being really easy to serve lunch and to do a wide variety of other things, but a total game changer. And certainly Derek had a part of that, and some other people. Various boxes. We do a lot of these 7-day trips. So when I was talking about earlier that the one boat that would do those day trips down your favorite stream, but then take you on the 7-day trip down the Selway River or the Middle Fork of the Salmon or the Bruno, or a rough whitewater stream where you had to carry a lot of gear. I needed that ability, and so I designed into these boats the ability to carry all kinds of different kinds of boxes and coolers, space, and all that sort of thing. Another thing that I learned, in travels, and mostly I learned it from a cat boat I had, is that there's an awful lot of parts and pieces that go into a lot of the frames that were out there on the market and still are today. You in essence, you patchwork things together and you bolt things together and you add different accessories and features on that all bolt on. And on one of the boats I counted it, we had 92 fasteners to put this frame together, and it seemed a little bit silly to me. It's a lot of time and effort to put all that together, and they tend to get a little bit sloppy over time, the ones I did anyway, or had. So what I did is I set out to try and create a frame that wouldn't do that would have no bolts, no nuts, no pins, no clips, nothing to put it together. And managed to get it done. We use what's called slip joints. You slide the frames together from side to side. And then I did another thing. I dropped it down inside the side tubes, so it wedges tightly between the side tubes. And it gives the whole boat a really tight, solid feel. Once again, striving to achieve something more like what the hard boats are, because that's the paradigm in the industry, and it's tradition. So anyways, all this thinking went into this kind of hodgepodge of design and improvement, and at the end of the day, I have what I wanted. And I'm fortunate because there are other people that seem to like what I've done, and so it's been a lot of fun doing this thing.
So this is, we're talking about the evolution of drift boat design, and you've talked about that all the way back from 1914 to the present day. Still, most people, when they think of a drift boat, they don't think of an inflatable. How do you change that? How do you shift that in terms of that discussion?
Well, to my eye, I get asked this often. People will say, "Well, why do you call your boat a drift boat? It's really a raft." And I will say, well, it is a raft, but it is a very specific raft. It was designed to break the film and to behave very much like a drift boat does. It was designed to have all the features that a drift boat has, and yet give you the option of going in much more technical, much more rugged places. And so I just say, to me, it's a drift boat because it does everything my Clackett Craft did. It does everything my Moravia Willowa 1 did. It does all those things. Plus, it's a Class 5-6 paddle raft. But when I got... Go ahead.
Let's talk about ratings, because that's currently a system that's kind of under review, the class system versus a new type of rating that's coming out. When you say that your boat is capable of Class 5, Class 6, what does that really mean to the person who's thinking about buying a drift boat?
Well, I would say the first thing it means is don't do that. don't
seems to be a common theme with everybody
we've
asked.
To me, I have run some Class 5 stuff myself. I've spent my entire life doing this. I'm good on the sticks. I know what I'm doing, and I understand the risks. And I've been through the risks, swiftwater training and all that stuff. But the real test probably was when some guys took one of my boats to Nepal on the flanks of Mount Everest, and they used the boat. It was a Green Drake with thwarts in it as a paddle raft to go do first descents in Class 5-6 stuff. They were going off waterfalls that were 30 feet tall and stuff like this in areas where there is no hope for any kind of rescue, and it was just really extreme out there stuff. So much so that one of the crew decided his life was more important than a couple of the runs they were doing, and it wound up being just 3 of them instead of 4. But they chose the boat for exactly the reasons that it's so good for fishing. It's got this rocker, and so it pivots quickly, and it slides out on the foam pile when you come off big drops. That rocker just climbs right out on the foam pile. Mm-hmm. And so, in terms of the rating system, it used to be that Niagara Falls was a Class 6, right? It was just sheer stupidity to even think about doing it. Anymore, people are doing a whole lot of stuff that used to be considered absolutely impossible. I mean, there's a couple of guys in the Northwest that have run an awful lot of 50-foot waterfalls in a two-man raft, and they're somehow pulling it off and getting her done.
So, Derek, we need to pioneer. We're going to do first ascent, doing the float from North Bend, Washington to Fall City, which involves going over a 200-foot drop.
The guy went over Palouse Falls in a kayak, so we might as well go over Snoqualmie Falls in a salmon fly.
Yeah.
Your salmon fly, Kirk.
How did the Palouse Falls drop go?
Of course, doing that 178 foot, I think, is what that was. I mean, that's the biggest drop ever.
Yeah, what's the Snoqualmie Falls at?
It's
200?
200. It's taller than Niagara.
Yeah.
For
sure. And that's just down the road here. Is that? No, it's up the road.
It's up
the road. Yeah.
They should call it Viagra Falls.
Yeah. I mean, that stuff kind of nuts.
Hey, see what you did there.
My son, who is my webmaster, went to what's called World Class Kayak Academy, and the guy that went off Palouse also did a couple of years prior to him, and they go down to Chile and run waterfalls and stuff. I mean, things that back when I was a kid, running the North Fork of the Payette was like the hairiest thing that had ever been done, and now that's just routine. He goes out and paddles that all the time, and they go do these waterfalls, and so I think that class thing really does have to be looked at, and I think it also needs to be looked at by the category of craft, because a class 5 to a kayaker is, maybe a class 6 to a rafter.
And I think there should be a distinct difference between, let's say, a waterfall where you're just kind of getting up to it and going over and riding it down versus like boulder drop up here on the Skykomish where you have large boulders you're dodging and that you can get pinned up against and stuff like that. I kind of see differentiation between them.
Yeah, I mean, I hear this with all the kayak kids all the time. They're talking about paddling the North Fork of the Payette, which is 18 miles of Class 5 plus stuff that's just absolutely insanely hairy. And most of them will agree that it's much more difficult to do that and survive it than it is to just paddle off a 40-foot waterfall, because really all you got to do is learn how to drop properly so that you don't land and break your back and kill yourself. But
one of the things that sticks out to me in my story with StreamTech is a few years ago, you contacted me and asked if I would consider rowing one. And given my history of growing up on whitewater rivers, and I know how whitewater rafts perform, so it was compelling. But at the same time, I knew that from a performance standpoint, I knew what I was getting myself into in terms of an inflatable. And the first time I rode that Green Drake, within 2 minutes, I knew that this was definitely a game changer. But the one thing that still comes to mind to me that's most important is safety when I'm on the waters. And I know that this is a craft that's safe, and that's the most paramount thing that matters to me. Do you think that that's something that in the current drift boat industry is underestimated? Is safety not talked about as much as it should be?
I totally think that's the case. And as you know, Derek, I was part of the Orvis Rendezvous for the last couple of years, and of course I won't be able to go this year because of a medical situation in my family, but I was teaching a little water safety course to some of the guides, and the first thing I would tell those guides in this course was, you must understand that when you are hired out as a guide by somebody who's looking to you for your expertise, you're a bit of a godlike figure in that person's mind, and they're going to emulate what you do because you're the expert. They've paid you for your expertise. They've paid you for your knowledge. And so the first thing a lot of guides do is get in their boat without a life jacket on. And I have sold an awful lot of StreamTech boats to people who have sunk their hard boats, and some of them have almost lost their lives in the process. And the reason is because a lot of them don't wear life jackets. They've got chest waders on, they're out in this boat, and they dip a rail, sink it, and all of a sudden they're swimming in chest waders with no life jacket. And my son pointed out to me that there were 9 drownings in the United States in drift boats. This was 2 years ago. None of them had life jackets on, and none of them were in heavy whitewater. So to me, the safety aspect of drift boats is definitely understated. And I think, too, that it speaks to, back when I first started discussing this, my kids. I had kids, and because I've spent so much time in whitewater, I really truly understand the danger, and I understood the danger when I dipped the rail on the hide and almost sink it. And to me, it was a thrill, and it was exciting to try to get through it. But boy, when it goes bad fast. And I personally rescued a couple of people that would have certainly drowned if I hadn't been there. I watched them sink their boat right in front of me, and it was really not a good scene. So yes, I think that safety is. I mean, one can get psycho about this and wear helmets everywhere you go and pads and all this stuff, but I personally think that the commonsensical side of safety should be stressed much more by the entire boating industry. Wear a life jacket. You know, on my boat, I have a rule: wear it or walk. It's real simple. I just don't even make it a debate.
Yeah. Well, I've gotten in a lot of boats belonging to guides and other people, and oftentimes the issue of a life jacket isn't even brought up. You know, they probably are tucked away in one of the bins on board, but that subject isn't brought up. It's just kind of ignored completely. And
it is.
Summer,
and the spare oar is broken in half, and it's in a box underneath the seat with a lock on it.
Right.
You know, and these are. I'm laughing, but it's not really funny. It's really the kind of thing where you can get away with it all your life, maybe. It's that one time it goes wrong that all of a sudden tragedy strikes.
Yep.
So what do you see, Link, for the future of drift boat design in terms of how we're using them as tools on the water, and given that you've got a really rich history not only designing these things, but you know where the DNA of these things come from. What's next for the drift boat?
Well, it seems to me at the moment that specialization is kind of the flavor of the day. I see certain groups like, for example, Adipose. They've taken a certain type of drift boat and they've done an extraordinary job of moving it forward to where they build a beautiful skiff. I mean, it's a great boat for what it's designed to be. But you're not going to go run a whole lot of Class 4 whitewater in it, and that's not what it's designed to do. It's all about rivers like the Missouri and stuff that's there.
However, Link, I think that we're going to try and run a skiff down the middle fork of the Salmon.
Oh, yeah, that was on our previous segment. We discussed it. We were talking to Adipose about that.
I always wanted to file a complaint with the Forest Service because, a couple of years ago I came around the corner and into Lower Powerhouse, and there was a great big old drift boat sunk right there in the middle of my run, and I had to work to get around it. And
it's an outrage.
I just say, I'm making it funny, but that really has happened to me on several occasions. And never once have I seen the word Helfrich on one of those boats. I don't think you ever will, because they're good. I think what happens is people tend to take their skill and they push it too far in a situation like that, and there's no rescue. I mean, you're just out there and you're in trouble.
Link, are inflatables like the StreamTech, are they idiot-proof?
Well, of course not. I always tell people, heck, you can drown yourself in a bathtub if you work it hard enough. Get Jack Daniels involved, and you'll have a better chance.
He can make great decisions.
What I've strived to do is to make it as simple as possible. The notion of no bolts and pins and all that to put the frame together. Really functional trailers I've designed, that sort of thing. I try to make it easy and simple and as no-brainer as you can. Having said that, I mean, you can get away with a lot more on an inflatable boat like mine that's real maneuverable than you can on a lot of others, but you can still pin it on rocks, and you can still, get caught up in the strainer on the river and kill yourself. It's pretty easy, but I keep working to try to find ways to make it cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. And, thanks to people like Derek out there using it all the time, I'm getting good ideas, and we keep striving to do that.
So where can someone who wants to learn more about StreamTech boats go? Website address, and you're based out of Boise, and the boat is made pretty much all right in Boise, right?
Yeah, it is. Most everything's made here. Obviously, the oars are not. They're made in Oregon by Sawyer, I use Sawyer Square Tops on them, but I have a pretty good website. Actually, I've had a lot of people tell me it's a great website. It's curious to me. It's my son and a kayak buddy has built it for me. He's kind of a whiz, and he maintains it, but it's www.streamtechboats.com, and there's the various models that we are offering are there, and all the accessories. There's a pretty good accessories catalog. There's downloads. There's a piece out there on what makes Moravia Rafts so great, and it's just a one-page piece that talks about their unique method of constructing their boat that turns into be an extraordinarily tough, durable product, and that's been a real good thing for me. So there's just a lot of information there. Typically, people will piddle around on the website, and they'll kind of look at the options, and then they'll call me up and ask me some questions, and if somebody wants to buy a boat, usually we do it over email, back and forth. I'll do a quote, and I like to personally drive out and deliver every boat, too. So if somebody gets a boat, I put it all together myself, and I take it out and I meet them somewhere halfway, usually in Burns, Oregon, or West Yellowstone, somewhere like that, and go through the boat with them front to back.
Do you take Bitcoins for payment?
Yeah. My problem is, I graduated college with an accounting degree and a finance degree, so things like that scare the hell out of me. Scams. I don't even pay my bills online. I'm scared of hacking.
I don't either. I don't even pay my bills. So I've also been heard that you trade delivery at delivery time for 18-pack of PBR. Is that still true?
I was once scammed by a very wise author in a parking lot in LaGrande, Oregon, and I gave up a boat for a 12-pack of PBR tall, and I thought I got the better end of the deal.
Well, he's smiling all the way to the bank.
Yeah.
Or the beer cooler.
Or the cooler, yeah.
I like to meet the people because, frankly, this whole fact that I'm in this business, I can thank my lovely wife, Becky, for. She grabbed me at a moment when I was about ready to just let the boat business die off because I was busy with developing and building, and I just fancied it a bit of a distraction. People'd call, I'd want to talk boats instead of building buildings, and it was getting in my way. And I explained to her that I was going to let the boat business just go away, and that was that. I was done with it. And she grabbed me by the cuff of the shirt and looked me in the eye and said, "You idiot." And so we negotiated, and she won. And I don't have any construction businesses anymore, and this is what we do. Yeah. But, in the last couple of years, I spent more time on the water fishing with Becky than I probably spent fishing in the last 20 years. So yeah. That's valuable. And I told her, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to meet every one of my customers personally. And that's really why I drive out and do the delivery. It's selfish, but it serves another purpose, and that is to get them on their way and have them understand that if they ever need any help, they can just call me 24/7. Because I kind of love what I'm doing.
I think that what did it for me was a trip that you took me on, and you kind of had this this glint in your eye, like, I have the place for you to go, and I have the boat for you to do it on. And I remember just going down a run and looking downstream, thinking, God, we're really gonna do that. We're gonna run that slot. And you said, get your streamer rod ready. And soon enough, I was just yarding huge fish out of this river. And by the end of that trip, it was pretty much solidified for me that if I'm going to run big water and I'm going to run all types of water, that's where big fish sometimes hide. And this is the craft to do it in. So I want to say thank you for a great product. I believe in it 100%.
Yeah, I like it because here's another problem that I faced. We would go to what I would call the Homo sapien and fiberglass hatch every morning, where everyone's fighting, in essence, for position at the ramp to launch their boat every morning. And I'm looking at all these sections of river that most of the guys with hard boats simply can't even think about running because they're too rough or they're too technical or they're too bony or whatever it might be. And I'm looking at those places because as yet, there's not nearly as much competition in those places. And so there's a lot of big fish in places like that. And I just, I'm not a person that likes to be in a big crowd and fighting for water. And I just like to float along and throw big dry flies at trout. And enjoy the day and watch the eagles go by and that. And I love running whitewater. So to me, this boat, that's what this boat's all about. It's about doing exactly that, going where everyone else isn't and having a fun day of running whitewater. And Becky used to guide Class 5 stuff in California on, Scotts River and some of those crazy streams up there. So she's as good on the sticks as I am. We fist fight over who gets to row, not who gets to fish.
That's a common occurrence among Stream Tech owners, yeah.
I almost kind of don't want to fish anymore because she catches so dang many big fish. It just makes me feel really inconsequential and stupid.
Well, yeah, we could probably love fest this all day long, but we should probably let you go, and thank you for your time. Let you get back to Becky, and
thank you for your boat.
Yeah, thank you for your boat.
Yeah, well, thanks for supporting my silly dream. That's really what this was. It was kind of all about me, and it turned out cool, and so I'm enjoying it.
Right.
Thanks for having me on.
You bet.
Take care, Link.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cool deal. So, yeah, a little bit of a love fest, but that's all right.
I tried not to gush too much, but
you're getting to know your hosts a little better. I kind of hung back and let you guys do that. So, I'm a hard boat user, but that's largely because I'm not a fly fishing guide on a river. I'm a guy that goes 8 miles down the road and drops it in the local river and fishes dirtbag methods from time to time. And
the Northwest is it's a hard nut to crack because this is the place where the Mackenzie drift boat was born. So if you asked 9 out of 10 people here in Duval, Duval, if you asked them what a drift boat was, they could draw you the same picture, 9 out of 10 times. Yeah. So that's kind of the shift, is that just because it's called a drift boat doesn't mean that it's stuck in a particular mold in terms of design.
And I love my boat. It's a 1980s Alumaweld 17-footer, just a giant tank. It's a beast, and I love it. It works great for dropping anchor and fishing methods that some fly fishermen would frown upon, but it's not the boat for everything.
No, I don't think there is a boat for everything.
No,
you're compromising on one level or another.
Right. It would not be a boat for Derek to take out and guide in.
I tried. I tried for a while, and it just didn't. It became more of a liability to me than it became an asset, and that's the number one thing when you're on the water. It's your boat is your tool.
Right. My boat doesn't even have a back seat. I put a cooler back there so somebody can ride back there.
You can't reach the beer that way.
Right. So my boat is certainly not made for fly fishing. We've used it for fly fishing plenty of times, and it works for it. But I'm compromising so that I can take family members out fishing and other friends that on the local, because I'm not going to take my not fishing relatives or friends out when they visit here once a year. I'm not going to take them on the Skykomish River and teach them how to fly fish and expect results, because that's not a river that happens on. So we go out there and do anything goes from the hard boat, and they're comfortable and all that. But if I was fly fishing 100% of the time, like for trout on, say, the Yakima where Derek guides, I would not be using my boat. So.
Well, you'll every once in a while you'll see a 17, 18-foot high-sided aluminum boat on the Yakima. It's not ideal, but if that's the boat you've got, use it.
Yeah, exactly. There's
no
reason you can't take it down the Yakima. It's just if you're doing it every day, that's not really the right boat for it.
Right.
It's like anything. If you don't take the time to understand how to use it and become competent at it, a good boat can go horribly wrong with the wrong person at the oars, and that happens all of the time.
And I'm gonna upgrade it at some point. In the next couple of years, when the open fly is just making tens and thousands of dollars a week, I'm gonna upgrade my boat. But
as soon as we can put a boat hitch on the Learjet, I think we're in good shape.
That's true.
I got a question for you guys. So 2 weeks ago, I took my boat out for its maiden voyage, and we were floating the Lower Yakima Canyon, which is flat, broad, easy water. Not without the possibility for getting into trouble or whatnot, but it's not technical water. And Trevor, in the rear admiral position behind the captain's seat, kept asking if he could oar. Do you want me to oar? Do you want me to oar so you can fish? If a guy asks you if he can oar your boat, should you give him a chance to oar the boat?
I would prefer somebody that knows the proper terminology.
Okay.
To be in the rower
Row
seat.
the boat.
Row.
I mean, it's like, what do you mean oar? You mean like slap it with the oar? Like, I don't know. What are you doing? I mean, oar isn't a verb.
I'm just giving Trevor some crap. He's probably not listening, so this will mean
it's
nothing.
fine.
But
it's like also. Can I also the boat?
Either or.
Two.
Yeah.
Also
Oar
two.
the boat. Yeah. Now I see what you did there. So OR versus OAR.
Yeah,
I can see Duval Lake from my house.
How about that?
From your house or from your broadcasting seat there?
Well, it's like a second home.
It is.
From Derek's corner.
Yeah, Duval Lake will be gone by the weekend probably. Mm-hmm. So yeah, boats. Boats are cool. I like boats.
Boats are good.
They say that the two happiest days in a boat owner's life are the day he buys it and the day he sells it.
I think that's more in line with powered boats because boat motors they've been out for 100 years and they haven't quite figured out how to make them reliable yet.
No.
Or the day that you burn it. It's the fastest way to get rid of a boat is to burn it.
Like whenever I'm out on the Skykomish, another river that you see a lot of sleds and stuff like that, I'm just thankful. I'm like, you know what? No matter what, I never have to fill this boat up with gas. I never have to worry about if the motor works or not. I throw it in and it floats down the river every time.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's what boats do.
Well, not if they're a powered boat. A lot of times they don't start. And I see a lot of guys in sleds will break down right by the set of rapids, and the motor will stall on them, and they go ping ponging down.
They're sure fun when they're working, though.
Yeah, Kirk actually has a sled as well.
Yeah, haven't been in that boat in years.
Well, I have a fishery this fall that I want us to go exploit with it, so we'll be talking about that later.
I'll have to drag that out of my buddy's garage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't mean any of what I was just saying about sleds. I think they're great, and I think we should take it out.
Okay.
Butter you up.
We'll do it.
Yeah.
We'll take the podcast out on the sled.
Mm-hmm.
Tone deaf taint biscuit.
Hey, them's fighting words.
No, these are insult creator words.
Yeah. All right. You guys got anything else before we give our listeners a break from our drivel?
Butterface Shart Hound.
Shart, like a steelhead art?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I am a butterface, and I do seek shart. Therefore, I'm a butterface.
I think it's time to pull the plug.
Oh, I see what you did there.
What?
Not a self-bailer?
Not a self-bailer. Pull the plug.
Ooh, hey.
Huh.
All right. Well, we'll be back next week. I don't remember what next week's show is, so it's a surprise.
It's the good one.
It's the good one.
It's gonna be a real good one.
It's 9.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
This was 8.
Yep. All right. You can go to our website at theopenflypodcast.com. We got Facebook, Twitter, G+, Instagram. If you go to our website, you can purchase hats and T-shirts and donate stuff to be entered into drawings and just all kinds of cool things and stuff. So
yeah, and remember, if you want to donate to Fish Not Gold, just send the money to us. We'll make sure that they get it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We're all nodding. You can trust us. All right. Cool. Well, we'll see you all next week. This is the Open Fly Podcast. We will see you later.
Bye.
Bye now.
I love hold music.